This video is designed to help you add and subtract decimals. The key to success here is to always line up your decimals. Adding and subtracting decimals. Add and subtract as usual, but make sure you line up your decimals. Basic steps for adding and subtracting decimals. Step number 1, always line up the decimals. That's the third time you've heard me say that, and we're only 20-something seconds in. Super important, the only way that this works. So for example here, if the problem is 25 and 14/100ths plus 16 and 2/10ths, you want to line up the decimals. I recommend you make a little structure. I know I have two numbers that are going to be in my problem and one in my answer. If I place the decimals there in the first place, they'll always end up in the right space. Then I can build my numbers around it. So I just put the numbers exactly where they go. Notice that each place value is lined up. All my 10s are together, all my 1s are together, all my 10ths are together, and I've got a little space. We're going to talk about that in step number 2. Fill in any zeros as placeholders at the end, especially if you're subtracting. But in any case, let's fill that in with a 0. That will ensure that all of our numbers get lined up appropriately. Step number 3. Now we're just going to add or subtract. In this case, we're adding, so 4 plus 0 is 4. 2 plus 1 is 3. 5 plus 6 is 11, so we bring the 1 down and carry a 1 to the next column. 2 plus 1 is 3, and we add the extra 1. That makes it 4. Then, the next step is to bring that decimal down. Now, because we built our structure in the first place, our decimal is already sitting there, but don't forget that that decimal needs to come down in your answer if you didn't have it there in the first place. So, then you want to check your work. Make sure it makes sense, because if you haven't lined your decimals up right, it probably won't. In this case, let's just look at using estimation to take a look at the front end numbers. This is really 25 and 16. Well, if I add 25 and 16, I'm going to get somewhere around 41. And if that's the answer that you see in the decimal, you've probably lined up your decimals correctly. So the final answer for this problem is 41 and 34/100ths. Now we're going to do some practice problems with adding and subtracting decimals. Now, if you recall from the instructional video, you'll notice that I always recommend making your little structure. So I know I'm going to be adding two numbers here. I'm going to put a decimal for each one and then a decimal in my answer. And I've now made a structure. Now I can just build my numbers around that and I never have to remember to line them up correctly. So I know that I have a 1 and a 6 before the decimal and a 7 and a 5 after the decimal. In the first number, I have a 5 before the decimal and a 0, 9, 1 after the decimal. So remember that now we want to fill in all those holes if we want to, or as we should, with zeros so that everything stays in place. And then we simply add. So 1 plus 0 is 1, 9 plus 5 is 14, 7 plus 1 is 8, 6 plus 5 is 11, and 1 plus 1 is 2. Notice that our decimal is right there already in our answer, so all I have to do is rewrite it and box it in to show that that is our answer. And our answer is 21 and 841/1000ths. In question number 2, we're going to do the exact same thing, but now it's subtraction. So I'm going to put in my little structure. I still have two numbers and an answer. I'm going to put in my structure. And then I'm going to build around it. So this is 312 and 55/100ths. And this is 16.2. Whoops. And now I'm going to put in all of my zeros to make my placeholders so everything lines up correctly. And then I'm going to simply subtract. 5 minus 0 is 5. 5 minus 2 is 3. I can't take 6 from 2, so I'm going to regroup and make that a 12. 12 minus 6 is 6. I can't take 1 away from 0, so I regroup. 10 minus 1 is 9, and 2 minus 0 is 2. So my final answer is 296 and 35/100ths. Here's question number 3. It's a subtraction problem. Again, I recommend that you make your little structure. I have two numbers I'm subtracting, and I will get an answer, and that decimal just follows right on down. Then I'm going to build my numbers around the structure that I've created, and all of the numbers fall right into place. Then I'm going to put in my 0 placeholders. and then I'm going to subtract. Pretty simple, right? Same steps over and over and over again. That's what an algorithm is. All right, 8 from 0, I can't do that, so I'm going to regroup. 10 minus 8 is 2. I can't take 6 away from 0, so I'm going to regroup yet again. 10 minus 6 is 4. 8 minus 0 is 8. And 2 minus 0 is 2. So the final answer here is 28 and 42 hundredths. And here's our fourth example. This is a word problem, but again, don't fret, no big deal. We just have to figure out what we know and what we need to know. So it says Savannah spent $11.50 at the movies, and Kiana spent $12.75 at the movies. They paid together, okay? Together is a key word. We're going to talk about what that means in a second. Using a $50 bill. Now the final thing is, what do they really want us to figure out? What they want us to know is how much change did they receive? Okay, so let's talk about that. That's got a lot of stuff going on. First of all, if they paid together, that means we can add their amounts together to find out how much they spent all together. And then if they paid they used a $50 bill to pay, we have to figure out their change. Well, we're going to have to take away what they spent to see how much change they're going to receive. So let's walk through all those different problems. First, let's figure out how much did they spend all together. So we're going to take the $11.50 and we're going to add the $12.75. Now remember, I've recommended that you make a little structure, put our two numbers and our final number. That way I never even have to think about the decimal again. But you must line the decimals up so that they, in order to get this answer correct. And then we're going to take the $11.50 and build it right around my structure, and the $12.75 and build it around my structure. Now in this first case, we're adding. We want to see how much money they spent all together. So 0 plus 5 is 5, 5 plus 7 is 12, 2 plus 1 is 3, plus another 1 is 4, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So together they spent $24.25, but they paid with a $50 bill. So we're going to do another problem, but this time we're going to subtract. We're going to start with the $50 that they had when they started, and we're going to take away the $24.25 that they spent. Now it's a subtraction problem. Now make sure when you do this subtraction you are super careful, because there's a lot of zeros in that top number, and that's where kids usually make their mistakes if they're going to make them. I can't take 5 away from nothing, and I can't borrow from any of these columns that are nearby, so I'm going to go all the way over to the 5 and make it a 4. That will make this a 10. Well, I'm still got to regroup, so I need to take that 10 and make it a 9. Once that becomes a 10, I have to borrow from it again, and I'm going to make that a 9, leaving me with a 10 here. And 10 minus 5 is 5, 9 minus 2 is 7, 9 minus 4 is 5, and 4 minus 2 is 2. Now, think about it. We had $50 to start with. We spent just about $25. It makes sense that we would have about $25 left. And that is exactly what happened. So, how much change did they receive? They received $25.75 in change.